Hey guys, how you going? Hope you're all doing very well. This afternoon I'm going to be doing yet another movie review for you all. This movie is a horror film from the Netherlands, Dutch language English subs, released in the year 2025, directed by Martin Smits, and this film is called Meat Kills. So Meat Kills is about this woman who has a job at an abattoir with a male that she really likes, but what the male and this abattoir don't realise is that she's undercover for this animal rights activist. So she's going to document all the horrible things that happens to the pigs inside this slaughterhouse, and she's going to make it known to the public. But she gets found out and she gets sacked, and so she's kicked out and her phone is taken away from her. But then she starts to get into this animal rights activist group where she says that she knows where this abattoir is that they can infiltrate because she has the ability to get in and to free these pigs from this hardship. But when they get there, they realise that the pigs have all been slaughtered already. So this angers them to the point where they actually take one of the slaughterhouse workers and things go downhill from there. So what happens at that point on is something you're going to have to find out for yourself, because that's as far as I'm going with my synopsis. Now my thoughts on Meat Kills. This movie really piqued my interest because it's been billed as the nastiest and bloodiest film to come out of the Netherlands. So whether or not there's any truth to that, I don't know. You know, a lot of these are marketing gimmicks, and so this is a movie that had the expectations that it was going to be a brutal affair, but was it going to be a good film? I really didn't know, because the reluctancy coming into these films is that they build themselves as nasty horror films but not necessarily good horror films. So you've got to really go into it with a healthy dose of skepticism, but at the same time I wanted a really bloody extreme film, and that's what Meat Kill delivers. I thought as though this is a very bloody film. The brutality and the gore effects I thought were actually fairly decent, and I really liked a lot of aspects to this film, but unfortunately there were some aspects that I didn't really like that I'll go into a little bit later. But what I also liked about Meat Kills was the overall characters. Now a lot of people say that characters are non-existent, but for me I beg to differ, because you have one side the activists who are going in there and to free the pigs, and so that is an honourable thing to do, but on the other side you have the pig farmers, the slaughterhouse workers, who have to make a living, and so they have to sell their product because they need food on the table. And so it's a story that has both sides, pros and cons to them. Is that the slaughterhouse, you know, obviously they're treating these pigs horribly, but they need their food, and these activists, yes, they're trying to free these pigs, but at the same time they have their own agenda. So you have two sides here that creates a lot of grey matter, and that's something that I didn't expect from this style of horror film. I just thought as though this was going to be a standout sort of gory horror movie with no brains to it, but I really liked the aspect of one side and the other side, and both of them being good and both of them being bad. And as the movie starts to spiral out of control, all hell breaks loose, and then it starts to go really psychotic, and when it goes psychotic, this is where the blood starts to flow. You can also have the opinion that, you know, humans getting slaughtered, is it any different to the pigs getting slaughtered? Now that remains to be seen. You know, I'm not here to, you know, make this a review, you know, a debate whether or not, you know, it's right to have a slaughterhouse. That's something that I don't want to go into, but that's what the movie suggests, and so that's something that I liked. I thought the acting for what it was fairly decent. The characters weren't overly unlikable like a lot of critics say, each to their own, but I didn't really get any real irritating factor from each side of these warring factions, and so that was something I liked. I thought the cinematography was excellent. It pays homage to the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. I thought there were some scenes that really made me feel as though I was watching the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, which can be a bad thing, but it was also a good thing because, as I said, paying tribute to the horror films that obviously inspired this movie. So as I said, the gore the gore effects were fantastic. It's a very bloody film, and if you go into it expecting that, that's exactly what you're going to get. If I have issues with Meat Kills, it is a very bare bones sort of film. Yes, you have that sort of aspect of thought-provoking quality with each side, but apart from that, it does follow a very generic path. You kind of know what's going to happen. I really like the ending. I will admit the ending took me by surprise, but there's a lot of aspects where I knew what was going to happen. I knew who was going to get killed, and that to me let it down to some degree. But as I said, it doesn't really bill itself as an Oscar-worthy film. It wants to bill itself as a brutal movie that has gore effects and that will shock audiences, and for that the extremity is definitely matched and it lives up to the hype. But as far as a genuine movie is concerned, as I said, the characters are fairly you know, thin, but that saving grace is the fact that you kind of have different emotions and conflicting emotions about each side and what they're doing, and it's just basically they contribute to each other's problems, and therefore it just explodes in a very, very bloodthirsty manner. So it's not a brilliant film by any means. As I said, there are some really predictable moments, but it's a fun film for what it is. If you like your really extreme horror films, Meat Kills is one I would recommend. It was better than I thought. I'm going to give this film 3 stars. Alright guys, that's it for my review. Hope you enjoyed it. Thanks for watching movies, and I'll see you later. Bye.